Before we get going, I do want to recognize a number of people who are here with us this morning. We have Mayor Liptak with us, Mayor Pilato is here with us, Friolo Scagliotta, Councilman Howard Wagner is in our audience, and of course Bridgewater Mayor Dan Hayes. Also, we need to thank our support personnel, the Middlebrook Rescue Squad, Bridgewater Police Department, our reenactors, and everyone else behind the scenes who really helps bring us together here year after year. So thank you again.
Thank
you. At this time, if I can invite Mayor Hayes to the microphone for his presentation this morning.
Thank you. Fellow residents, guests, speakers, good morning. I'd like to thank the Washington Campground Association and the other volunteers, including Bridgewater Public Works, for keeping the ground so nice, for their dedication and commitment to this ceremony, and in particular to the values that this ceremony represents. I'm grateful, too, for the opportunity to address you this morning alongside with such distinguished speakers. As mayor of the town of 44,000 residents, I'm proud that we offer events such as these that recognize the history that shapes our future. I've been attending this ceremony for years, and each time I'm drawn to imagining what it must have been like in 1776 here in Bridgewater, Boundbrook, or Greenbrook. I wonder what it was like to be present when our nation's promise of liberty and pursuit of happiness was more of a notion than a reality. I imagine it must have been in many ways similar to today. People were undoubtedly busy with everyday life. They had families to feed, property to care for, bills to pay. To many, the discussions in Boston and in Philadelphia must have seemed abstract in the light of the pressures of daily life. I imagine being there when the news arrives and the Declaration of Independence is read in the town square. The promise of a new nation, the promise of liberty, the threat of war, and the call to action. The question, how will the call be answered, became unavoidable to everyone. I would have liked to have been there as families and friends debated, then decided how they would answer the call. We know today that the answers were varied. The burden was not equally shared. Some chose to join the fight as soldiers and militia. Some chose support roles so others could fight, and many answered the call with their wealth and with their lives. We are here today because enough of them cared enough and gave enough to make our nation a reality. 236 years later, our nation is the greatest on earth. Liberty and the pursuit of happiness remains the promise, remains the opportunity. But now, just as then, it is a promise extended with a call to action that's backed by our reply. How do we answer the call? What is our response to a nation that promises all liberty and the pursuit of happiness? Like the colonials, our answers are as varied as our circumstances. Today, though, we reflect upon the past and opine the future. Will enough say yes to service? Will enough say yes to volunteering? Say yes to supporting those who serve? And will you be among them? Since our nation's inception, the call has always been answered, and I pray that it always will. How will you answer the call? What would you have done in 1776, and what will you do now? Thank you. God bless us all, and God bless America.
Thank you, Mayor. The honor of reading the Declaration of Independence is something we've been able to share with key individuals from our community for 122 years. This year, we're fortunate to have as our reader, Linda Barth. Linda resides in Somerville with her husband, Bob, and is an active member of the Delaware-Raritan Canal Watch, a group that helps protect the historic Delaware-Raritan Canal here in New Jersey. And she's an author of travel, academic, and children's works. and she is a teacher emeritus of the Bridgewater school system, counting me as one of her hundreds of fourth grade students. So I'd like you to welcome Linda Barth as our reader of the Declaration of Independence.
Ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to call out your huzzahs if you feel strongly about Mr. Jefferson's words. In Congress, July 4th, 1776. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing, with manly firmness, his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise. The state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount in payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefit of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy of the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by his hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince, whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant, is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attention to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They, too, have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States in Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. And that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Thank you, great job. My name is Jamie Schleck, and I'm a member of the board of the Washington Campground Association, and it's my honor this year to introduce somebody to speak to us a little bit about good citizenship and to present the awards to this year's award recipients for Good Citizenship Award. Senator Michael Doherty is serving his second term in the New Jersey Senate as a representative of the 23rd District. The senator is a member of the Senate Education and Judiciary Committees. He previously served 4 years in the New Jersey General Assembly. He was born in Point Pleasant and attended public schools in Glen Ridge. He's a 1985 graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point. He served in the United States Army from 1985 to 1993, achieving the rank of captain. In 1993, Senator Doherty graduated from Seton Hall University's School of Law. He's a member of the bars of New Jersey and New York and is a registered patent attorney authorized to practice before the United States Patent and Trademark Office, practicing in Washington, D.C. Senator Doherty and his wife, Linda, have 3 sons who have served and are serving on active duty in the military. Please join me in welcoming Senator Doherty.
Thank you very much, Jamie. What Jamie didn't tell you is that he is a 1991 graduate of the United States Military Academy, and things got a lot easier after I left, right, Jamie? You know, we have an old story, you know, if you run into somebody that's close, and I'm 85 and he's 91, if you run into somebody that's close, you say, hey, I remember when you hazed me when I was a plebe, but I'm sorry, Jamie, I missed that opportunity. It's great to be here with all you fine folks on Independence Day, 4th of July, 2012. I'm pleased to be joined by your freeholder, Pat Scaglione, and your local mayor, Dan Hayes, Mayor Joanne Liptak, and Mayor Kerry Pilato. I think Somerset County and the surrounding communities here are very fortunate to have outstanding elected officials, and it's great that they're out here today. And I noticed something about the crowd. We have the folks who like the sun sitting up here, and then we have the folks who like the shade. They like to stay a little cool. And I got to tell you, I'm one of the folks who like the shade. Being of Irish descent, I really can't stay out in the sun too long. I've learned a lot since I've been here. As you may know, every 10 years we do redistricting, and as a result of redistricting in 2011, my district, the 23rd that I've represented for over 10 years now, was very fortunate to pick up some great communities in Somerset County, Bridgewater Township and Raritan Borough, Bound Brook being some of them. And I've learned that my predecessors, Senator Kip Bateman and Assemblyman Pete Biondi and Denise Coyle, have participated in this ceremony many times over the years. In fact, Kip Bateman was the president of the Washington Campground Association. Is that right, John? So I know I have a lot to live up to. But I'm very impressed to see all the veterans, very impressed to see the scouts, and this is a tremendous turnout. And I'm going to be presenting in a moment the Citizenship Award, and it's to recognize our youth that have contributed to their society and been great citizens, to encourage them that they continue to do that. And it's particularly appropriate here on the 4th of July. Our founding fathers and all the folks who fought in the American Revolution, they were certainly good citizens. They saw a situation that they didn't like, and they decided that they were going to step up, and they put everything on the line, literally, and they made a change, and we're all benefiting, and we have peace and prosperity and liberty today because of their efforts. So I'm very honored to be here. Thank you for the invitation, and I look forward to coming back. Mrs. Barth did a great job. Were you a reading teacher? A reading, you know, and John was saying that you fourth grade, you remember Mrs. Barth? Well, I remember my fourth grade teachers as well, Mrs. Barth, and that means you must have been a tough teacher, because the ones who were tough, and Mayor Liptak laughs, the ones who were tough, that means they love you and care about you, and you know what? You remember those teachers 20 years later, right, John? So I'm really pleased to be here, and Jamie, are you going to read the names? How do you want to? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, our first award recipient, and I'm going to ask the recipients, once you get your award, you come here and you stand here next to the center. We'll get all of our award recipients together. We'll be able to take some pictures together. Our first award recipient was described by her teachers and her guidance counselors as somebody who's helpful and kind to both students and staff, always ready to pitch in to assist with school activities and exemplify school spirit. She's a Golden Jazz Band participant and nominated for Student of the Month. She attends Girl Scouts and is helpful with babysitting. She's truly deserving of this wonderful award. Our first award recipient from Robert Morris School in South Bound Brook is Lauren Menyavar. Lauren? Our second award recipient, described as a high honor roll student, a great citizen, an example for others, kind to his students, respectful of his teachers and the principal, and always willing to give a helping hand. Our second award recipient from Smalley School is Axel Quesada. We're usually very strict about the awards. We say there's one award recipient per school. And this year we got a call from Eisenhower Intermediate School, and they said, you know what, this is an exceptional year. We have two students that are equally deserving of the award, and we can't decide, and they're just such great students. Would you consider this year giving two awards to our students? And we said, absolutely. The way that you describe these students, they both deserve it. So our first award recipient from Eisenhower Intermediate School is described as the epitome of a model student. Regardless of the situation, whether it's an academic one or a social one, she can be counted on at all times to go above and beyond to make the right choice and be an upstanding peer, student, and model. Not only is she academically driven, she's also involved in numerous activities in both school and support her overall character. She swims and she plays soccer, she's in basketball, she's in the choir. Additionally, she's an altar server at her church, and she definitely deserves to be recognized for her outstanding achievements. Our first award recipient from Eisenhower Intermediate School is Taryn Ross. Our second award recipient from Eisenhower School is described as somebody that her guidance counselor said has the pleasure for working with for the past 2 years. She's honestly the most responsible, hardworking, outgoing, dedicated students that she's ever worked with. No matter what the situation, she's always willing to go above and beyond and lend a helping hand when needed. It's her true intrinsic spirit in her everyday interactions with both her peers and adults alike that stand her apart from other students. Her innate ability to mediate through difficult peer issues has earned her reputation of being a natural leader and a natural mediator. She has activities that are involved in student council, softball, dance. She's been recognized at school as won the Citizen of the Month for her outstanding character. The school says that they cannot be more proud of the next award recipient, Julia Brickfield. So these are our 2012 Citizenship Award winners. One more hand. Now this is an exceptionally special year for us because we're going to make a special Citizenship Award this year. And this is somebody who's no stranger to this podium, somebody who several years ago was one of the award recipients, and I think it's no accident that this person has continued to contribute to our community, has been involved in Scouts, and has an Eagle Scout project, which you are all sitting on today, which was refurbishing the seats here. So our next award recipient, if you want to come up here, this is Andrew Meisenbacher from Troop 228. Andrew? Maybe Andrew wasn't able to make it here today because he's maybe going before his Eagle Board or something. So anyway, we want to thank Andrew for his continued contributions to our community here. So if parents, if you want to come up here, take pictures of your award winners, don't be bashful. Come right up here. Senator Doherty, maybe you want to step to the side here with them and yep, yeah, sure. Why don't you guys step forward? Why don't you guys step forward onto the grass there? Okay, thank you very much. Next, I'll turn the microphone back over to John Haley, who will introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. Jamie. This year, our keynote speaker, historian H. Kellis Swan, is going to be talking about General Washington's orders to attack, issued here in Middlebrook Heights, June 14, 1777. I urge you to listen carefully. The words are complex, the phraseology is complex, but you will hear some very forward-thinking concepts introduced from General Washington and his orders to march. Kels?
Thank you, John. Can you put it down a little bit? Thank you. Thank you, John. Officers, trustees, members, and guests of our Washington Campground Association, greetings. After a series of military defeats during the summer and fall of 1776, General Washington's Continental troops retreated across New Jersey. On December 1, Washington ordered the gathering of all available boats and utilized them to cross a small army to safety in Pennsylvania. The British Army, controlling New York City, settled into winter quarters and left a garrison of 1,400 German mercenaries at Trenton. Washington then devised a plan to attack this Trenton garrison on the day after Christmas, 1776. It was indeed a bold and daring plan, but to quote, "dire necessity must justify an attack," as most of his troops would be leaving service at the end of the year, and few new recruits would take their places in January of 77. Against all odds, using elements of surprise, offense, and clever maneuver, which is taught today at West Point, he secured a single victory over the Hessians at Trenton on December 26th, and again at Princeton on January the 3rd, thus ending his first military turning point during these 10 crucial days. It was a victory that could also be known, and I haven't heard this before, as his first moral turning point, as the morale invigorated the fighting spirit of the American revolutionaries throughout the colonies. Now, following these victories, Washington marched his army to Morristown, where he rested the remaining troops, trained new levies, and prepared for a new campaign during the spring of 1777. During the late winter and early spring of 1777, the British enemy were quartered at Perth Amboy and New Brunswick, and engaged in minor military activity in Middlesex and Somerset counties, seeking needed vital supplies to survive the season in these towns. The local militia, however, and they well know it, were kept very active in fighting small but very severe enemy attacks during this season when they were attempting to secure vital supplies. Noteworthy, as you locals know, are two such engagements at Van Ness Mills, present-day Weston, Monday morning, January 20th, 77, and again at Boundbrook on April 13th, 77, when they attempted but failed to secure many barrels of flour from Michael Field's mill along the village's stone bridge. Washington took into account these attacks and realized that the enemy would soon begin their campaign, their spring campaign of 77, and decided wisely to move his army south to these Middlebrook Heights and the valley between present-day Martinsville and this location. He arrived here on May 28th of 77. Tented in Martinsville, Washington then daily rode his horse into the valley and these heights, using his glass telescope to closely watch for any enemy movements out of their New Brunswick quarters. He did not have to wait very long for this movement. To John Hancock at 10 a.m. on June 14th, 1777, Washington wrote, among others, these words: "The enemy are in motion, and a body is advancing from Millstone towards Van Vecten's Bridge, Van Dern. Another division is on the road leading towards Coryell's Ferry, Lambertville. We are packing up and making every preparation to act as circumstances shall seem to require." This was sent immediately to Congress, meeting in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Early that morning of June 14th, General Washington prepared his order to march, as he called it, and dictated them to his aide-de-camp, Stephen Moylan, who then immediately called together the guard officers, the commanders at Middlebrook, to have their secretaries make copies for their use in troop orders. He did not know that also on June 14th, in the Continental Congress meeting in Philadelphia, a flag resolution was adopted retiring the old Grand Union flag of January 1, 1776, Continental colors, some people called it, to be replaced by the Stars and Stripes flag that today, by act of Congress, is permitted to fly day and night without lights, only at Betsy Ross's house in Philadelphia and here at Camp Middlebrook. A tradition has been executed on the site for over a century. It was here only several days later that Washington received this new Stars and Stripes flag to fly first over his Middlebrook encampment. Now, for the first time in my life here, you're going to hear Washington's order of march prepared that same day, June 14th. Very important for him militarily, obviously. Prepared for immediate execution should the enemy commence their march overland to capture America's capital of Philadelphia. And these are from the Papers of George Washington, Revolutionary War Series, Volume 10, pages 34 to 36. We historians have to be very fussy about primary evidence. University of Virginia. Order of march, June 14th. The whole army to be under arms exactly at o'clock, and that's left blank. The tents to be immediately struck and the wagons loaded. The regiments to be told of going into grand and subdivisions, divisions, and to march at half distance. The officers to be posted at their proper places, the brigadiers at the head of their brigades, and the major generals at the head of their divisions. The whole army to be in readiness to march, exactly at the hour appointed, in this position to await the orders of the major general of the day for moving, that the whole army may march together. The vanguard to consist of 40 light horse and 1 brigade of foot, under the command of Brigadier Muhlenberg from Pennsylvania, to advance about 2.5 miles in front of the army, to march about an hour before the troops are ordered to be in readiness. Reconnoitering parties to be sent some distance in front and upon the flanks to examine all the roads and suspected places where the ambushes may be concealed. The pioneers to march between the light parties in front of the vanguard and to make such repairs in the bridges and roads as are necessary to afford an easy and safe passage to our army. The vanguard to take their artillery with them and to advance from the right. The army to march in the following order, advancing from the right by divisions. General Whedon's brigade first, then Woodford's, Scott's, Wayne's, DeHaw's, Conray's, and Maxwell's. The artillery annexed to the brigades to march in the order it is now posted in the lines. Maxwell's brigade to form the rear guard, one quarter of which is to march in the rear to the rest about half a mile to pick up stragglers. A detachment of 30 light dragoons to form a part of the rear guard. Colonel Morgan's light infantry to cover the left flank of the army, exclusive of which each brigade is to furnish a party of 90 men, properly officered, to keep on the enemy's flank and to be under the command of the field officer of the day. The park of artillery to march in the center of the reserve or second line. No soldier on the march is to leave his ranks to fetch water, but if necessity should oblige any to quit their places, and you can imagine why. They are to leave their arms with the battalion, a non-commissioned officer to go with them, and see that they return to their proper places promptly. Great attention must be paid in passing difficult defiles, that the men may pass them briskly, if necessary by files, and then form by subdivisions as soon as the road will permit. The head of the column is to move slowly, as soon as they have passed the defile, until the rear has gained it also. If it should be necessary to halt the troops to refresh the men, the Major General leading the column must fix on a proper piece of ground where the battalions are to draw up in the rear of each other in the order they marched. The arms and packs to be grounded, and the rolls called. Make sure they're all there. The signal for marching to be a rough beat by the drummers of the 1st Battalion at the head of the column, thus to be followed by the battalions from front to rear. The packs to be taken up, the arms shouldered, the rolls called, and the battalions to march off in the order before mentioned. The officers always to march with their divisions, allowing their men to shift their arms from shoulder to shoulder to ease them, but to keep the muzzles up to prevent accidents. The Major General of the day will fix them on the ground to encamp on. The Quartermaster General with his regimental quartermasters to mark out the ground for each brigade and battalion, the whole army to encamp in 2 lines. Green's division on the right, Lord Sterling's on the left. On the front line, General Steffens on the right and General Lincoln on the left of the second line. The scouts to reconnoiter 3 miles around the camp. The Brigadier of the day to fix the place and post the out sentries and guards, which are to be given by brigades instead of the line. The park of artillery to form in the center, between the 1st and 2nd lines, which regiment to be furnished with wagons according to the strength, to carry their tents, their pots, heavy old cast iron pots, and camp kettles. A wagon with 4 horses to be allowed for this purpose to not less than 120 or more than 150 men. Other regimental wagons to go with the column of camp equipage. The regimental women to go with these wagons. The wagons loaded with the tents to march in the rear of each brigade to which they belong. Upon the approach of the enemy on the march, the baggage wagon to march out of the front lines into the rear about 300 or 400 yards and there wait for further orders. All the wagons of the Army, except those employed in carrying the tents, to parade near the quarters. Major Generals to be formed into a park in the following order. The Commander-in-Chief forms the front of the column. Commander-in-Chief front of the column, always at the head. The Adjutant Generals, the Paymaster General, the Muster General, next in order. The baggage of divisions in the order of the line marches, the Major Generals in front, the Brigadiers in front of the baggage of their respective brigades. The regimental wagons to have a guard of a sergeant and 6 privates, those to be at least fit for duty for any of the regiments. Each brigadier to appoint a subaltern to command the whole regimental guards. Each division to appoint a captain to command the escort for the baggage of the division. The general of the day to appoint a field officer to command the guard for the escort to the column of brigades. The Quartermaster General commanding military stores, very important, and the Commissary General, each to be furnished with a subaltern officer, a sergeant, and 20 men to guard the stores and their several departments from the line. The Hospital Department to be furnished with a sergeant and 10 privates as a guard from the line. The wagons in the Quartermaster Department to march next to the baggage, the military stores next, then the provision and the flying hospital in the rear of its marches in the same column. And I'm going to skip down now. No wagoner to leave his wagon or unlink his horses, but to be in readiness to receive the orders of the commanding officer of the column. The wagon masters to attend the orders of their several division and to pay due attention to the orders given by their superiors. When the baggage wagons of the Army arrive at the ground, which the Quartermaster General has previously directed, they are to be drawn up in the following order. First, His Excellency, always first, General Washington, the Commander-in-Chief on the right of the hold, and then General Green's division, Lord Sterling, General Lincoln, General Stephens, and Quartermaster General, Commissary of Military Stores, Commissary of General and Hospitals, taking care to leave proper intervals between each division when the ground will admit, so that they may move off to the right or left without confusion. Should the Army march to the left instead of the right, the order is to be reversed. Talk about details, my goodness. As had occurred several times earlier, the British enemy attempted to lure Washington and his troops off Middlebrook Heights into the valley below in order to engage in a bitter fight and cause the American general to surrender. But Washington was too wise to follow the British commander's plans. He would not move from these heights. As a result, Washington received information that the British were stirring on the Hudson River at the beginning of June 1777, and they therefore abandoned these marching orders, and seeing no reason to hold these Middlebrook Heights, instead moved his army to Pompton Plains on June 2nd, ending his first Middlebrook Heights cantonment of 1777, which lasted for 35 very important days from May 28th to July 2nd. 20th century historians here have recorded Washington's brilliant strategy on these Middlebrook Heights encampments. Encampment is a short stay, a cantonment is the entire winter, so really we should call it Washington Heights Cantonment. It's the Watch Cantonment and the Eagle's Nest, as 20th century historians have dubbed it. Although no battle was fought here, the American capital of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania was spared British capture for precious months later in the year 1777, and General Burgoyne never got British support, leading to his army surrender to General Gates at Saratoga, New York on October 17, 1777. Thank you for your attention on this hot day.
Thank you, Kels. And I did hear Kels mention, talk about detail in there. What we're talking about is the Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army issuing instructions to such great detail when other generals in later years, Eisenhower, Powell, Petraeus, had a much larger span and a much more advanced cadre of senior and junior officers, field officers and company grade officers, and they were able to issue far more I guess loosely defined directions and leave the final execution, final decisions to those commanders in the field. But back in the day, detail, detail, detail. At this time, I think it's appropriate to invite Mayor Liptak for the benediction of today's ceremony.
Let us pray. Dear Father in heaven, watch over all of us. Bring us all back together again next year for the celebration of the Declaration of Independence. Keep us always aware what a privilege it is to live in this country. How many of our forefathers and foremothers fought for us, died for us, so that we can assemble here. This is the greatest nation in the world, and it's you young people, the people that got the awards today, that need to remember this is your country, and it's your responsibility to continue the greatness. So in God's name, we ask your blessing, and this is enough for this very hot day. Thank you.
Honored guests, supporters, and the community, thank you very much for coming, and we will see you here next year.